Hey, what's up guys? Nick the Informative Fisherman here, and today we're going to be breaking down Lucky Tackle Box's June Panfish box. Let's break this bad boy open and see what we got. Open up the fancy paper here. First thing we have right here is a little information on a program called Special Ops Survivors. Check that out. It's to help out the families of those guys. It's 100% tax deductible. I'm not going to go into full details on there. Really cool program. Met these guys at the Bassmaster Classic. First product we have right here is a Raw Lures mini jerkbait. 2.5 inch 1/8 ounce jerkbait, dives 3 to 5 feet. I already rigged this bad boy up right here on a light action spinning rod. Moderate fast, bending just up from the middle right there. Gives me a little bit of cushion. Little tiny treble hooks. You don't want too stiff of a rod. 6'6" lights, perfect. 6-pound P-line floor clear line. A little bit of stretch is not going to tear those hooks. And it's a real smooth casting line. One of my personal favorite baits is the BWA Deuce. I've talked about this on Lucky Tackle Box Live. This is the 3-inch miniature version now. Super awesome bait. It's a spear tail swim bait, and I'll show you a little bit closer once we get going out on the water because we're fishing behind my house again. But these baits have a ton of action. Super, super soft, subtle bait. I mean, just look at that little thing. Really, really cool bait. I went ahead and rigged that up already on an ultralight setup with a 1/16 ounce jig head. And my jig head right here was orange. I painted it black. Well, I didn't paint it. I Sharpied it black and let it dry in the sun before I put it on here. When you have a real natural finish on a swim bait or a lure, I like to blacken the jig head. The real natural bait, I like them to focus on that. A lot of natural bait fish have black in them, so I always blacken my jig head on the natural baits. If I have a bright bait, I'll go with a bright jig head as well. But that natural black is a good combination. I have this on my ultralight. It's a slow action, bending all the way down to the handle with 4-pound test. It's lighter. I'm going to be making much more accurate casts, getting it down there near some rocks, near some branches, and slowly jigging it and slowly swimming it. With a swim bait on a 1/16 ounce jig head, you have depth control. You can fish it shallow, fish it through the middle of the water column, you can fish it along the bottom. That's the setup for that bad boy. From there, these are really cool. It's fishbelly.com. I know some of you guys got this particular one and another one. There's 2 different types. I'm going to show you guys this bait right here. It's a little minnow style bait, okay? This thing looks like a juvenile bass, a fry, and it also looks like a pond smelt. And right now, we're in the middle of June, and a lot of the places across the country, the fish have already spawned, the smelt have spawned, the shad are spawning, so where you have a ton of small bait fish that look just like this. Super, super subtle, very natural. And the front of the lip has a nice little dive down on there to where you can rig the jig head through the bottom to where you can hop that swim bait along the bottom like so, or you can swim it. And we'll go more into that on the water, and I'll show you what setup I have that on. It's my identical ultralight setup with the 4-pound test. And if you see right here, that jig head's going through the bottom of the nose because that's the nice flat spot on there. The benefit about that is if you reel that bait along the bottom, if you have a clean gravel bottom and you're reeling a little ball head jig like that in that 1/16 ounce, that bait's going to sit up and it's going to twitch a lot. This doesn't have a swim bait tail. It's a split tail on there, which is real subtle and moves a lot just with a slight deflection. So if you're bouncing off gravel and rocks, it's going to twitch that tail around a lot for you. So that's my basis behind this one, is to bring it across some rocks on the bottom. From there we have the crappie spin, which is basically it's like a spinnerbait version for crappie jig. And if you look at that right there, it's got a round Colorado blade, ton of displacement, jig head where you can thread your bait up on there. So I've already gone ahead and rigged that one up right here on that light setup, that 6'6" light setup right there with the 6-pound floor clear. And I've comboed it with another bait that's coming in your box, the Southern Pro Minnow Tube. And the really cool part about the Minnow Tube is it has a wider body that will go directly over the top of that jig head design. To where if you look right here, I've threaded it over the whole jig head. So this looks like a juvenile bluegill with that orange belly. So now he's riding along, giving some flash. Looks like a juvenile bluegill. Bass, crappie will tear that thing up. And these little tubes, man, these little Southern Pro minnow tubes are nice. There's a ton of skirt material on there. I want to show you one of the keys. When you rig up a little bait like this, you want to make sure that hook comes out in the middle of your skirt material. If your skirt material is all forced to this side, the bait's going to ride real funny. You want to make sure that skirt material is evenly placed over that hook to where it'll ride straight instead of tilted off to the side. From there we have Drew's Custom Baits Pintail Minnow. And if you look at these little guys, it just looks like a little piece of plastic with a straight tail on there. What this actually looks like is a juvenile shad. A lot of the juvenile bait fish look just like this. The water's been clear here coming out of the spring. It's a little hazy today, but I'm going to go with this natural brown color that came in here. I'm not sure what they call this color here, but there's 5 in this bag. These are perfect for rigging on a lighter jig head. I'm going to do this like 1/64 ounce up to an 1/8 ounce. An 1/8 ounce is getting a little bit heavy, so probably 1/64 to 1/32 max. I'm going to fish this guy, and I'm going to hop it along the bottom down there, just looking like a little juvenile bait fish. These things get ate up. This is a very traditional shape right here, and the design of these really nice thick plastic, very hardy. It's going to hold up to a lot of fish for you. The Stillhouse hair jig, 1/80th of an ounce, super light. Okay, now the benefit of a hair jig is that when you stop it in place, that hair is going to have natural subtle movement to where if a fish comes up to examine it, it's still moving. And they eat hair jigs way more often on the paws than any plastic. So that's the benefit of a hair jig for you. This is so light, I would throw it on my ultralight, but I'm still only going to be able to cast it 10 feet. So I'm either going to utilize some split shot up from it, or I'm going to fish this under a slip bobber, which I'll show you the rigging for that later, and then I'll show you the rigging for this one as well later. From there we have our Mustad cricket hooks. I always use these guys on a drop shot rig, the double drop shot with live minnows for crappie. Phenomenal. You can fish trout with these, a variety of things you can catch with these. They have a nice long shank, which is nice if you take kids out fishing and the fish happens to get it deep. That longer shank's going to make it easier for you to get the hook out of that fish. Lucky Tackle Box sticker. And then we got my boy Travis on the cover, Travis Moran. Such a handsome little fella. All right, guys, let's get on the water. Okay, so I've got that raw minnow rigged on here. I just tied it on with an improved clinch knot on the 6-pound test. Now, all you want to do is just a jerk bait. You're going to cast it out there on your spinning gear. You're going to reel it down a little bit. Then you're going to twitch, twitch, pause, twitch, 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 pause, twitch, 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 pause, and then start over with 1, 1, 2, pause, 1, 2, 3, pause. I see a bunch of bass fry following it, but not a big bass, but I had one follow it just a second ago. And it's usually on those pauses with the jerkbait is when they're going to come and grab it. The crappie, the trout, the bass, they'll all probably eat this thing. There is a good bass on that 2.5 raw minnow jerkbait. Holy, this thing ran out. I'm fishing for like... See, the hooks are so little on these miniature jerkbaits, it's imperative that that drag set real light. Coming up, 3-pounder. I had one earlier, probably about 4.5 pounds, come up and swat at this thing too. This time of year, they get so in tune to eating small bait, you can still catch a big fish on a smaller bait. Look at that. That right there, that's a nice bass. Really nice bass. Probably just under 3 pounds. Chomp that thing. They're really keyed in on this smaller bait right now, guys. It's on that 3-inch BWA deuce. Here he comes. Now I know these bass aren't panfish, but I've caught the, oh my gosh, I've caught the tar out of crappie on these. Trout eat the deuce really well. When I first got my hands on the BWA deuce, I was throwing, I think, the 5-inch version. And I was hammering bass in the fall, and I was bugging, man, you guys need to make a tiny one. And sure enough, they answered the call on that one. It's another big bass. He's gonna jump. He's gonna jump right here. Here he comes. Oh! And the bait, that was a 5+ pounder. That was a 5-pounder, okay? And he was on that 3-inch deuce, just like that, on that 1/16 ounce jig head. Amazing. Another good one on that B-Wad deuce. There we go on that pintail, that Drew's Customs. I'm not sure what we got, if it's a bass or a red ear. I'll show you how I was retrieving this as soon as I land this fish. It is a big red ear. Ooh yeah. Oh yeah. That right there is a big red ear. Right there on that pintail. I have that pintail rigged on my ultralight on that 1/16 ounce jig head. All I'm doing with this, I strictly want to get it out to the bottom. I want to make sure I'm on the bottom. I don't want to really be suspended with this. More often than not, your higher percentage hookup ratio with this style of bait is off the bottom. Make sure it gets down there, and I'm just going to dance my rod tip like so, and I'm going to slowly retrieve line on the reel at the same time. Just nice and slow, just enough to make sure that tail's dancing, and that really drives them crazy. Well, on that little fish belly hog shad, now I had this guy rigged on the jig head just like I did the pintail, and I got a few short strikes, and I used that mustad hook to tie up the drop shot setup. Let me untwist this hook right there. There's your drop shot setup. I used that mustad hook in this hog shad here, and all I have it is nose hook through, and I'm going to show you. But that hook sits upright like so, and that minnow sits there like this, and he suspends in the water. And since there's so much fry and so much smelt in my system right now, I'm just shaking the tar out of it, which is forcing this minnow to just sit there and shake and twitch and look wounded, to encourage those bigger panfish, to encourage those bass to come over and grab it. There's so much you really need to make your bait stand out at that point, but that is what they're feeding on. You just got to give them a lot of extra shaking and twitching to get them to hone in on that wounded prey. Got something to eat that little tiny hair jig. There we go. Another red ear. Oh, come on, come on, come on. Good. Come on. Pretty, pretty, pretty. There we go. Look at that. Little tiny hair jig in her mouth right there. So I have that Southern Pro creek spin right here with that Southern Pro minnow tube. Normally I would use a spinner if it was windier or overcast conditions. It's been clear and sunny all day, and it's pretty slick right now, though we are getting some intermittent clouds, so I do have this tied on still to throw in those conditions. I like a little flash. That little Colorado blade kicks off a little bit of thump. They can feel it when that rougher water goes, that light penetration is less, and they will actively chase the bait down. That's why that spinner works so well when it's a little rougher and overcast. But right now, since it's slick and calm, I want a subtle presentation, so I have that minnow tube on a little tiny tube jig hook right there, and I'll show you how to rig that in just a second. It's much more subtle. I'm letting it fall to the bottom and just giving it lift, hop, just slow lifts, let it fall, slow lifts, let it fall, just like slow motion hops. Hooked up on that minnow tube. Wow, he pulled some snot off the bank and everything. This dude just flew out here. The cool part about these minnow tubes, oh, it's a huge red ear. It's a huge red ear. The awesome part about these minnow tubes is they look like juvenile bluegill. And these red ear hate it when juvenile bluegill come over and start messing with their beds. Look at this monster. Oh, and he's got that salad on his head. Oh boy. Come here. Look at that. Pull back and show you what he chomped. That little minnow tube, that little juvenile bluegill look to it. That little amber body right there, the little orange belly. Oh, he thought a bluegill was invading his bed, and he wasn't about to have that for a second. Now, I'm supposed to be showing you another bait, but this minnow tube is killing him right now. Oh, look at it, slid way up the line too. Look at this one. I'm just gonna release her right outside the boat. I know she came off a bed because I just caught a male who was spraying on a bed, but that minnow tube's absolutely slaughtering him right now. Beautiful. Okay, so the overcast is moving in big time right now. I'm gonna try that creek spin with that little Colorado blade on there. Puts off a lot of thump, a little bit more profile, maybe get even a bigger one to eat it. That's the thing, you know, when you got a lot more profile on a bait like this, it tends to get a bigger bite as well. I love to use them for crappie no matter the conditions, because It displaces like a small bait fish, but with the kind of like a larger thump for a small bait fish, so they think it's a higher protein meal. There he is. Oh, dude, that's a tank. I have my drag a little tight. Yeah. There we go. Look at that. Another beauty. Not nearly as big, but that guy was fighting hard right there. Now, when it comes to casting and retrieving a bait like this, let me show you what I like to do. So a lot of people look at, you know, basically any spinnerbait style bait, you know, just a Y-shaped bait right there, and they think to cast it out and reel it in. And yeah, that's great and all. I casted it out, and yeah, I could reel it fast or reel it slow, cover the top, cover the middle of the water column, cover the bottom, but occasionally I like to speed it up and then slow it down, speed it up and slow it down. And what that does, if a fish is following it, it often looks like the fish dropped its guard for a second or went to attack something and lowered its guard. And that's an opportunity, that sudden speed change for a bass or for a big predator panfish to move in and grab it at that point, or it looks wounded. But either way, it's giving a predator fish an opportunity to execute on that bait if they're tracking it. And I like to speed it up and slow it down and then slow roll again, and speed it up and slow it down. A lot of the time that's going to get you a lot of reaction strikes versus just slow rolling it or reeling it fast. Wasn't getting you anything. All right, guys, that's it for June's Lucky Tackle Box Panfish Box. We greatly appreciate you guys watching. If you're not signed up, get signed up at luckytacklebox.com. We'll see you next time, guys. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo.